The marble floor was cold beneath Esther's feet, sending a chill up her spine that mingled with the tremor of anticipation in her heart. Each step she took was deliberate, her bare feet whispering against the polished stone, grounding her in the present moment even as her mind raced ahead to what awaited her. The palace was silent, the vast halls echoing with the memories of laughter and music now replaced by a heavy, expectant hush. Esther walked alone, her silhouette framed by the towering columns and intricate mosaics that had witnessed centuries of royal intrigue. She paused at the threshold of the massive golden doors, her breath catching as she realized that this was the moment everything would change or end. The weight of destiny pressed down on her shoulders, heavier than any crown. Her heart pounded so fiercely it seemed to echo through the marble corridors of the Palace of Shushan, a steady drumbeat of fear and hope. She could almost hear it reverberating off the ancient walls, a reminder that she was still alive, still fighting. The royal guard stood at attention, their faces expressionless beneath their ornate helmets, spears gleaming in the torchlight. They watched her with the silent authority of men who had seen many come and go, their presence a living warning of the law she was about to defy. Everyone in the palace knew the law. No one, not even the queen, could approach King Ahasuerus uninvited. To do so was to risk death, a decree as unyielding as the stone beneath her feet. The threat was not just a rumor, but a reality that had claimed lives before. Esther steadied herself, drawing strength from the memory of Mordecai's desperate pleas. She could still see his eyes, filled with both fear and hope, urging her to act when no one else could. She remembered the faces of her people, men, women, and children, living in the shadow of a decree that threatened to erase them. Their suffering was a silent cry that echoed in her soul, fueling her resolve. For 3 days and nights, Esther had fasted and prayed, seeking guidance and courage. In the flickering candlelight of her chamber, she had wrestled with fear and doubt, her prayers rising like incense, pleading for deliverance not just for herself, but for an entire nation. Now, as the massive golden doors began to open, a blinding light spilled into the hallway, illuminating her path. The brilliance was almost overwhelming, as if the very heavens were watching, holding their breath. There, at the far end of the throne room, sat the king, her husband, but also the unpredictable ruler of Persia. His presence was both familiar and terrifying, a man who held the power of life and death in a single gesture. His eyes met hers, cold and unreadable, searching her face for a sign of weakness or defiance. In that moment, Esther felt the full force of the risk she was taking, the razor's edge between mercy and wrath. Esther's journey was not measured in steps, but in faith. Every movement forward was an act of defiance against fear, a declaration that hope could triumph over despair. She hesitated, just for a heartbeat, every instinct screaming at her to turn back, to run from the danger that loomed ahead. But she pressed on, her courage forged in the fires of love and duty. This moment was bigger than her fear, bigger than her life. The swirling doubts and terrors that threatened to engulf her were nothing compared to the cause she carried in her heart. The fate of her people rested on her courage, on her willingness to risk everything for those who had no voice in the halls of power. She was their hope, their shield, their last chance. With a deep breath, Esther stepped into destiny, a heartbeat away from either deliverance or doom. In that single, trembling moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if courage would be enough to change the course of history. Esther's journey began far from the palace, in a humble home where she was known as Hadassah. Orphaned at a young age, she was taken in and lovingly raised by her cousin Mordecai, who became both her guardian and mentor. Their home was modest, filled with the warmth of tradition and the quiet strength of faith. Hadassah grew up learning the values of her people, the importance of kindness, and the power of hope, even in the face of hardship. She was taught to cherish her heritage and to trust in something greater than herself, even when the world seemed uncertain. She never dreamed of royalty. Her world revolved around faith, family, and the simple joys of daily life. Hadassah's days were spent helping her family, listening to Mordecai's stories, and finding beauty in the ordinary. She was gentle, thoughtful, and wise beyond her years, shaped by the love and resilience of her small community. The palace, with its grandeur and intrigue, was a distant world, one she never imagined entering. But everything changed when Queen Vashti, in a bold act of defiance, refused the king's command and lost her crown. the royal court was thrown into turmoil, and a search began across the vast Persian Empire for a new queen, one who would possess both beauty and character. Messengers traveled from city to city, seeking young women to present before the king, and the fate of many lives shifted in an instant. Esther, following Mordecai's wise counsel, concealed her Jewish identity and joined the many hopefuls summoned to the palace. It was a decision filled with uncertainty and courage, as she stepped into a world of opulence and secrets, leaving behind everything familiar. She carried with her the lessons of her upbringing, her faith, and the quiet strength that had always set her apart. For an entire year, Esther endured the elaborate beauty treatments required of all the candidates. The palace was a place of competition and comparison, but Esther's humility and grace distinguished her from the rest. She treated everyone with kindness, earning the respect and admiration of those around her, not just for her appearance, but for her gentle spirit and unwavering dignity. She won favor with everyone she met, from the palace attendants to the highest officials, and eventually, she caught the attention of the king himself. Her presence was a breath of fresh air in the royal court, and her character shone brighter than any jewel. When her turn came to meet the king, Esther asked for nothing extra, no lavish adornments or special favors. She chose simplicity, letting her true self shine through. It was her authenticity, not just her beauty, that set her apart in a world obsessed with appearances. King Ahasuerus was captivated by Esther's unique spirit and inner strength. He saw in her a rare combination of beauty, wisdom, and humility, and he crowned her queen, elevating her from obscurity to the highest position a woman could hold in Persia. The orphan girl, once hidden in the shadows of her people, was now the most powerful woman in the empire. Her transformation was nothing short of miraculous, a testament to the power of faith, courage, and destiny. But this was not the end of Esther's story, only the beginning of a much greater purpose. Her new role would demand even more courage, wisdom, and faith than ever before. Esther's rise to the throne was not a coincidence, but a divine setup for a destiny she could not yet imagine. She was chosen for a reason, placed in the palace at a pivotal moment in history. Soon, Esther would be called upon to risk everything, not just for herself, but for her people. Her courage and faith would change the fate of a nation, and her story would echo through the ages as a beacon of hope and heroism. As Esther settled into her role, a new threat emerged. Haman, a man consumed by pride and hatred. Elevated above all other officials, Haman demanded everyone bow to him. Mordecai refused, honoring God above men. Haman's wounded pride turned to rage when he learned Mordecai was a Jew. Destroying one man wasn't enough. Haman plotted to annihilate all Jews in the empire. His hatred became a genocidal plan, masked as loyalty to the throne. The shadow of evil grew, and Haman began orchestrating a massacre. The fate of an entire people now hung in the balance. Haman cast lots to choose a day for his plan, the 13th of Adar. He deceived the king, painting the Jews as a threat and offering a fortune to destroy them. The king, swayed by Haman's words and bribe, gave him full authority. Decrees were sent across the empire. On that day, all Jews were to be killed and their goods plundered. The city of Shushan was thrown into confusion and fear. Mordecai mourned publicly, donning sackcloth and ashes. For the Jews, hope turned to terror. The day of destruction was set, and escape seemed impossible. Darkness had fallen over the people of Israel. News of the decree reached Esther. Seeing Mordecai in mourning, she sent for answers and learned of Haman's plot. Mordecai pleaded with her to go to the king and beg for mercy. Esther hesitated. Approaching the king uninvited meant death unless he extended his scepter. Mordecai's reply was unwavering. "Do not think you will escape. If you remain silent, deliverance will come from elsewhere, but you and your family will perish." Then came the words that changed everything. "Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Esther's fear was reframed as purpose. Her position was not a shield but a calling. The choice was hers: shrink back or step up in faith. Destiny was knocking at her door. Mordecai's words ignited a spark of courage deep within Esther's heart. In that moment, she realized the weight of her calling and the risk she was being asked to take. The fate of her people rested on her shoulders, and though fear pressed in, she chose to respond with faith. She called for a 3-day fast, no food, no water, for herself and all the Jews in Shushan. Esther knew that this was not a battle she could fight alone. She needed the strength of her people, united in purpose, and the intervention of a power greater than any king. This was total surrender, a desperate plea for divine intervention. In the silence of the palace, Esther and her people humbled themselves, laying aside pride and comfort, seeking mercy and guidance from God. Esther stripped away her royal comforts, removing her jewels and silks, choosing instead the humility of prayer and fasting. She understood that true strength is often found in moments of weakness, when we let go of control and trust in something greater. Every hunger pang became a prayer. Each ache in her body reminded her of her dependence on God. The emptiness in her stomach echoed the longing in her soul for deliverance and hope. Every moment of thirst, a declaration of trust. With each passing hour, Esther's resolve grew stronger, her spirit more attuned to the voice of God. She learned to surrender her fears, exchanging anxiety for faith. She united her people in spiritual battle before facing the king. Together, they formed a shield of prayer, standing as one in the face of danger, believing that their cries would reach heaven. At the end of 3 days, Esther resolved, "I will go to the king, even though it is against the law." She knew the risk. To approach the king uninvited could mean death. Yet her faith outweighed her fear. "If I perish, I perish." With these words, Esther embraced her destiny. She accepted the possibility of loss, but refused to let fear dictate her actions. Her courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph of faith over it. She had done all she could in prayer. Esther rose from her knees, her heart fortified by the prayers of her people and the assurance that she was not alone. Now, it was time to act. The moment of decision had come, and Esther stepped forward with unwavering resolve, ready to face whatever awaited her. Esther put on her royal robes, not as a symbol of power, but as a sign of her willingness to serve and sacrifice. She was prepared to risk everything for the sake of her people. Her faith was her armor. It shielded her from despair and gave her the courage to walk into the unknown, trusting that God would go before her. She would face the lion's den, trusting God to go with her. The dangers were real, but so was her hope. Esther's surrender was not weakness. It was the source of her greatest strength. In surrender, Esther discovered a power greater than fear, a strength that comes from letting go and trusting fully. Surrender had become her greatest strength. On the 3rd day, Esther dressed in her royal robes and approached the throne room. King Ahasuerus saw her and instead of anger showed favor, extending the golden scepter. Esther approached, touching the scepter in gratitude. The king asked, "What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom it will be given to you." Esther, wise and strategic, invited the king and Haman to a banquet. The king agreed, and Haman was summoned. Esther's plan was in motion. She knew timing was everything. The first step had been taken. Her people's fate now rested on what would happen next. Faith had opened the door. Esther's courage had bought her a chance. The battle was just beginning. The banquet was intimate, just the king, Esther, and Haman. Haman, blinded by pride, felt invincible. The king again asked Esther for her request. She delayed, inviting them to a second banquet the next day. Her patience built suspense and lulled Haman into false security. Haman left elated, but his joy vanished when he saw Mordecai still refusing to bow. His pride was fragile. One man's integrity shattered his happiness. Meanwhile, Esther's wisdom was at work. She was setting the stage for the perfect moment. The trap was nearly set. The fate of a nation hung on her timing. That night, Haman plotted Mordecai's death, building gallows for him. Meanwhile, the king, unable to sleep, discovered Mordecai had once saved his life, but was never honored. Haman arrived, hoping to ask for Mordecai's execution. Instead, the king asked Haman how to honor someone special. Thinking it was for himself, Haman described a lavish ceremony. The king ordered Haman to honor Mordecai exactly as described. Haman, humiliated, obeyed. At Esther's second banquet, the king asked again for her request. Esther revealed Haman's plot. "Grant me my life and spare my people." The king, enraged, demanded to know the culprit. Esther pointed, "This vile Haman." Haman's evil was exposed. His downfall was swift. Justice had come at last. The king ordered Haman executed on the very gallows he built for Mordecai. Esther and Mordecai were given Haman's estate and position, but the original decree still stood: death for the Jews. Esther pleaded again, and the king allowed a new decree. The Jews could defend themselves. Couriers spread the news across the empire. The Jews rejoiced. Hope returned. On the appointed day, the tables turned. The Jews triumphed over their enemies. Sorrow became celebration. Mordecai established the festival of Purim to remember their deliverance. Esther's story became a legacy of courage and faith. She fought not with weapons, but with wisdom and voice. Her ordinary life became extraordinary purpose. Like Esther, you are placed where you are for a reason. You were made for such a time as this.